With the addition of Notre Dame in the ACC this season, competition is starting to heat up, and there's a few teams on the hunt to dethrone Clemson. We'll sit down with Debonair D. Jackson to discuss this year's preseason ACC power rankings. All this and more coming up next on Heisman Talk. The 2020 season will look a little bit different for the Power 5 conferences, considering that two of them had to postpone their fall seasons, forcing a notable team like Notre Dame to join the ACC. Now, with this being said, there are a few teams in the ACC chasing after the Clemson Tigers. To talk more with me, joining me now, my co-host, Debonair D. Jackson. D, welcome to the show.
Hey, man, thanks again. I'm happy to be, or to get that title of co-host. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you, man. So, with that being said, like I said, the Clemson Tigers obviously have been the most notable team coming from the ACC for the past several years. But this year, there's a few teams on the rise. So today, we're going to discuss our top 3 teams in preseason power rankings. So, D, who is your first team in the ACC?
I think this one's pretty easy. This team has won 5 consecutive ACC championships, and they're a constant fixture in the college football playoff. This team is Clemson. Dabo Swinney has definitely taken those guys and he's really built the program there, and they're a phenomenal program. You got Trevor Lawrence, you have Travis Etienne. And they have these recruiting classes that they're top 10 in every year, and so they're always getting top talent. Like last year, how they got Brian Breesy and Miles Murphy and guys like that, Trenton Simpson from North Carolina. So they're always getting top prospects, so you can never count them out. I think that Clemson would be that number 1 team this year in the ACC.
And most would probably agree with you, D. But today, I'm disagreeing. I'm going with the North Carolina Tar Heels for my number 1 ranked team in the ACC, and for a few reasons. For one, they've got a sophomore quarterback who's coming off of a 7-6 season in Sam Howell. Sam Howell threw for over 3,000 yards last year, 38 touchdowns, and only 7 interceptions, which, by the way, is less than Trevor Lawrence. Along with that, all 6 of their losses, D, were 7 points or less. And so when you look at a team that lost to Clemson by 1, lost on the road at Pitt by 7, and then lost to Virginia Tech in overtime by 2, Mac Brown's got this team rolling. He's got their confidence going. Recruiting showed. They finished 13th in the 2020 class. They're currently ranked 13th again in the 2021 class. So with that being said, North Carolina Tar Heels could surprise some people, and that's why at this point I've got them ranked number 1.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, they would definitely shock a lot of people if they take the reins from Clemson and end up being the 1 team at the end of the year. So, I mean, they have a good chance, but, we'll have to see what happens. So.
Absolutely. So moving forward, D, who do you have ranked as your number 2 team in the ACC this year?
So my number 2 team is who you mentioned in the intro, Notre Dame. They're being added into the ACC, which I believe they should have been added into the ACC. They play ACC basketball. I think that they're playing ACC football as well. So now they're in it, and I think that they, have a really, really good chance of possibly knocking off Clemson. I don't think they will. That's why I have them at number 2. But, they have a great offense in Ian Book. They have a great offensive line, some great tackles, great center, really good guards. Last year they averaged 431 yards a game, and 37 points per game. So, I definitely think that along with their defense, I think that they'll definitely be able to at least be the number 2 team in the ACC.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because last year, and for their whole school, they've not been in a conference. So, now you put them into the ACC with some competition, Not that they haven't had competition before, but consistent competition. It's really going to shake up some things. I agree. But for my number two team, I'm going to have to go with your number one, and that's the Clemson Tigers. Now, the reason I don't have them ranked number one is mostly because of the key losses of some of their star players to the NFL draft. In fact, they had three first round draft picks this past year. That being T. Higgins, their wide receiver, Isaiah Simmons, who is a star linebacker, and obviously A.J. Terrell, who played pretty well in the national championship, even though they lost to LSU. But this is a team that, like you said, has been 5 consecutive years of winning the ACC title. They've been to 4 national championships in the past 5 years, winning 2 of them. So, of course, the record shows. But this is a new year with new talent. Trevor Lawrence is projected to be a first-round pick, so I don't really expect him to want to take the hits that he's taken in the past. And that's another reason why I don't have them as my number one. Along with that, you've got other teams that'll be competing like North Carolina and Notre Dame, with also maybe a Miami or Virginia Tech. So I think this is the first year that Clemson's actually going to get to see some depth in the competition in the ACC.
Like I said, man, you're predicting something bold here. Having the 5-time reigning conference champions being knocked off. If it happens, then hey, that would actually make for entertaining football and entertaining TV. So, we'll have to see what happens. I think they'll be number one this year.
Yeah, we shall see. So moving forward again, we go to our number 3 spot. Who do you have ranked number 3 in the ACC coming into this year?
So number 3 was a difficult one for me. We talked about it, and I ended up going with Miami. I was thinking, either North Carolina, possibly Virginia Tech. Both have pretty good programs. I think Miami will catch some people off guard this year. They have a new offensive coordinator, coming over from Houston, and they have their quarterback, from Houston, who transferred in, De'Aaron King. And so I really believe that, along with their defense and how, they'll be able to get after the quarterback, with Quincy Roche at defensive end. They have a good tight end in Brevin Jordan that De'Aaron King can use as a safety outlet. They have, a good cornerback in Al Blades. So they have a good mixture of defense and offense. I'd be worried a little bit about their offensive line, but I think with De'Aaron King's ability to run the football at quarterback, I think that, they won't get as many sacks as they did last year. I think it was like 50 sacks that they gave up or something last year. It was a lot. So I think, with the offensive coordinator coming over from Houston and also De'Aaron King coming over from Houston, I think they're going to shock some people and end up in that top tier of the ACC.
Yeah, and I think most would probably agree that Miami is a team that could really shake up things in the ACC. Again, another team that's kind of been in the running for the past few years. Now they bring in a guy like De'Aaron King, who shined at Houston. I remember we talked about him a couple of weeks ago in our most impactful players coming into this season. So, yeah, he's a dynamic player that could really do some good for Miami. Now, I'm going to have to disagree with you again, D. For my number 3 team, I'm going with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And the reason I don't have them ranked higher is simply because there's just a lot of question marks. Every single year, Notre Dame is labeled as an overrated team. And I think they could potentially be overrated again. I think they finally get their shot at consistent competition, being in a Power 5 conference this year. You look at a guy like Ian Book, who's basically on a revenge tour. Last year, he suffered some key losses against Georgia and against Georgia and Michigan that kept them out of the playoffs potentially. So now they join a Power 5 conference, and he's going to be looking to come after those ACC defenses. Along with that, they've got a pretty solid defense. They bring back their leading tackler, Drew White, who shined last year with 80 tackles, 2 sacks, and 2 fumble recoveries. So to have that leadership on the defensive side of the ball, I think is really going to play a key role for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish this year.
I agree, man. I mean, I had them at number two, so I believe in Notre Dame a little bit more than you do, but I would definitely have to agree with the points that you made about Notre Dame. It'll be really interesting to see how they fit in an actual conference this year, not being an independent. So
Yeah, and just real quick, I'd like to add that you know, it was like you said, it was pretty tough for both of us when it came down to the number three spot. You look at a teams like Virginia Tech, even like a Duke or a Georgia Tech, who could really make an impact in the ACC this year. Georgia Tech brings back the most starters in all of college football, so I'd make sure you watch out for them as well.
agreed, man. Yeah, that I mean, like I said, those guys. You have Virginia Tech. You have Miami. You have North Carolina. All these teams, Notre Dame. They all can push for that number two spot, possibly number one spot. We have them in number three spot, but it could get really, really interesting. So ACC is definitely a conference to look out for this year. More
Absolutely.
talent.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, obviously, the ACC has made its mark in the college football playoff, thanks to Clemson mostly, but this year could be a little bit different. When we come back next week, we're going to talk about the preseason power rankings for the SEC, so you won't want to miss out on that. Also, I'd like to mention again that we recently started a blog called HeismanTalks.blog. The link will be down in the description. So if you want to check out more of the ACC, that article will be up tonight at 8 p.m. So be sure to check that out. Until next time, make sure to subscribe, give this video a big thumbs up, and we'll see you next week. This is Nate Dogg and D signing off.